It was the most meaningful.
How about that?
Most meaningful. When you get to the loss column, once your team is 10 games out in the loss column, look for next year. Somebody asked me not long ago who the 5 greatest ball players I ever saw were. I said, you got all day, because I saw a lot of them. I came into the big leagues in the 1960s, and there were still guys around who I'd heard about before I ever put on a major league uniform. Then I stayed around long enough to see another whole group come along behind them. So picking 5 isn't easy. And everybody has their own idea about what great means. Some people go straight to the numbers, home runs, batting averages, stolen bases, whatever it is. That's fine. I look at those things too. But when you actually played against these guys, you remember different things. You remember how an outfielder moved before the ball was hit. You remember a hitter walking up there and suddenly the pitcher started taking a little more time between pitches. You remember sitting in the dugout thinking, don't give this guy anything to hit. Those are the things that stick with you. And I'll tell you something else. I wasn't exactly walking around the league thinking everybody was better than me. I thought I was pretty damn good. You probably already knew that. But I could give another player his respect. If a guy could play, I knew it. And every once in a while, you'd see somebody do something and just shake your head. Maybe it was the way he hit. Maybe it was the way he ran. Maybe he made something difficult look so easy that you almost forgot how difficult it really was. I saw plenty of Hall of Famers. I saw plenty of stars. I played with some of them and competed against a whole bunch more. But these 5 are different for me. They're the guys I can still picture without having to look anything up. I can see the swing. I can see the way they carried themselves. I can remember what it felt like when they came to the plate. So if you're asking me for the 5 greatest baseball players I ever saw with my own eyes, these are the 5 that come back to me first. The first guy I have to talk about is Roberto Clemente. And if you never saw Clemente play, I don't know if the highlights really explain him. You had to watch the whole game. That's what I remember. Everybody knows about the arm. You'd hear about Clemente throwing somebody out from right field, and believe me, that arm was real. Guys knew better than to get careless when the ball went out there. But Roberto wasn't just an arm. He did everything like it mattered. That's what always got me. Some great players could make the game look casual. Roberto wasn't like that. He played with an intensity you could see from the other side of the field. A ground ball into the outfield wasn't just a ground ball to him. He attacked it. He threw the ball back in like somebody was trying to take something from him. And at the plate, he could hit almost anything. You'd watch a pitcher make what looked like a pretty good pitch, and Clemente would somehow get the barrel on it. Sometimes I'd think, how did he hit that? That's just what he did. I respected that because Roberto had pride, a lot of pride. I understand that kind of player. I had some of that myself. You wanted people to know you were good, but more than that, you wanted the other team to know it. You wanted them thinking about you before the game even started. Roberto had that effect. There was also something about the way he carried himself. He didn't need everybody's approval. He knew who he was. I liked that. And people forget how much he had to deal with away from the field. Roberto came up in a time when a Latin player didn't always get treated with the respect he deserved. He heard things, he dealt with things, but when the game started, none of that changed the way he played. He came after you. That's what I remember most. Not one home run, not one throw, not some number on the back of a baseball card. I remember watching Roberto Clemente and knowing I was looking at a man who took the game personally. There aren't many players like that. Roberto was one of them. The next guy is Frank Robinson. Now, Frank was somebody I understood. He played angry. I don't mean he walked around mad at everybody all day. I'm talking about the way he competed. There was always something in him that looked like he had a point to prove. I knew that feeling pretty well. Frank didn't need anybody telling him how good he was. He already knew. And when he stepped into that batter's box, you could see it. There wasn't much fooling around. He was there to beat you. I remember watching him with Baltimore, and you never felt comfortable when he came up. You could have 2 outs, nobody on base, and everything seemed under control. Then Frank walked to the plate. Now you've got a problem. He could hit the ball out of the park, obviously, but what impressed me was that he wasn't just standing up there trying to hit home runs. He was a hitter. If you made a mistake, he'd hurt you. If you tried to pitch around him, he'd make you work for it. And he wasn't afraid of anything. Pitch inside, fine, knock him down, he'd get back up. And I promise you, he wasn't going to forget it. That's the kind of player I respected. Frank also had this presence about him. Some guys become leaders because somebody gives them the title. Frank didn't need a title. You knew, his teammates knew, the other team knew. When Frank Robinson had something to say, people listened because he'd earned that right. Years later, when he became a manager, that didn't surprise me at all. He understood baseball, but more than that, he understood what it meant to compete every single day. That's harder than people think. Anybody can get excited for a big game. Can you bring that same attitude on a Tuesday night when you're tired, your legs hurt, and you've been on the road for 2 weeks? Frank could. That's why I respected him so much. There were players with prettier swings. There were players who smiled more. There were probably guys who were easier to play against. Frank wasn't interested in being easy to play against. Neither was I. Maybe that's why I always appreciated him. When I think about Frank Robinson, I think about a guy who never gave you anything. If you wanted to beat him, you had to earn it. Then you get to Willie Mays. What do you want me to say about Willie that hasn't already been said? The man could do everything, and I mean everything. I saw plenty of great hitters, plenty of guys with power, plenty of fast guys, plenty of great defensive players. Willie somehow put all of it together. That's what separated him. You'd watch him for a whole game, and he might beat you 3 different ways. Maybe he'd hit one out. Maybe he'd take an extra base when you didn't think there was an extra base there. Then you'd hit a ball into center field that looked like trouble, and somehow Willie was standing underneath it. After a while, you started wondering where you were supposed to hit the damn ball. And he made it look like fun. That's something I always noticed about Willie. Some guys looked like they were working every second they were on a baseball field. Willie looked like this was exactly where he belonged. But don't confuse that with him not caring. Willie wanted to beat you. He had pride. He knew how good he was, too. People sometimes talk about confidence like it's a bad thing. I never understood that. If you're going to play at that level, you'd better believe you're good. Willie believed it. So did I. Maybe that's another reason I enjoyed watching him. I was still a young player when Willie was already Willie Mays. He'd been through all of it by then. The big games, the attention, the expectations. None of that was new to him. But when you saw him in person, he didn't feel like some old legend hanging around. He could still make you watch. That's the difference. A lot of people know Willie from photographs or old films now. They know the catch. They know the home runs. They know the name. I remember the player. I remember looking out there and thinking, there wasn't really anything on a baseball field that this guy couldn't do. And coming from me, that's saying something. I wasn't giving compliments away for free. Willie earned every one of them. If somebody asked me to show them what a complete baseball player looked like, I wouldn't have to think very long. I'd tell them to go watch Willie Mays. The next guy is Hank Aaron. Hank was different. He wasn't the kind of guy who needed to make sure everybody in the ballpark noticed him. He didn't have to talk much. He didn't have to put on a show. Then the game started. And sooner or later, Hank Aaron did something. That's what I remember about him. You could watch him hit and almost wonder why everybody else made hitting look so difficult. There wasn't a lot of wasted movement. He didn't look like he was trying to knock the cover off the ball every time up. He'd just swing. And that ball would take off. I knew something about hitting home runs, so believe me, I paid attention to guys who could do that. Hank's power always impressed me because it looked so easy. Some power hitters let you know they're trying to hit a home run. Everything is big swing, big finish. Sometimes they nearly come out of their shoes. Hank didn't need all that. He'd get the barrel there, and the ball was gone. But the thing I respected even more was how consistent he was. You knew what you were getting. Year after year there he was. That sounds simple until you've played this game for a while. Baseball wears on you. Your hands hurt, your legs hurt. You go through slumps. Pitchers figure things out about you, so you have to figure something out about them. Hank just kept hitting. And then there was all the pressure that came when he got close to Babe Ruth. I watched that from a distance, and I knew enough to understand that what Hank was dealing with wasn't normal baseball pressure. It was something else. People were watching every at-bat. Everybody wanted to talk about the record, and there were things being said and sent to him that no ball player should ever have had to deal with. Hank kept going. That's the part people shouldn't forget. Everybody remembers the home run that broke the record. I remember the man who had to wake up the next day and keep playing baseball while the whole country seemed to be watching him. He handled it with a kind of dignity I don't know that I would have had. I probably would have said a few things. Hank didn't need to. He let that bat do enough talking. And it talked for a long time. And number one for me is Mickey Mantle. Now I know what some people are going to say. Reggie, you didn't really play against Mickey. That's true. By the time I got to the big leagues, Mickey was near the end, but I saw him. I watched him. And when I was a kid, Mickey Mantle was one of those names you didn't have to explain to anybody. Everybody knew Mickey. The first thing that got me was the power. I liked power. That's probably not exactly breaking news, but Mickey's power was different because he could hurt you from either side of the plate. Think about that for a minute. Most guys spend their whole lives trying to build one good swing. Mickey had two, and the stories about how far he could hit a baseball were everywhere. You'd hear players talking about a ball he hit here or one he hit there, and usually baseball stories get a little bigger every time somebody tells them. With Mickey, you didn't always have to exaggerate. The real thing was good enough. But as I got older, I started appreciating something else about him. The man played hurt. And I don't mean the kind of hurt where you wake up sore and need a little extra time in the training room. Mickey's body took a beating. His knees gave him trouble. His legs gave him trouble. There were days when just getting through a game couldn't have been much fun. Then he'd walk up there and still scare the hell out of a pitcher. I respected that. People look at the old pictures now and see this smiling, handsome guy in a Yankees uniform. They see the home runs and the World Series and all the stories about New York. Players see something else. We know what it takes to keep showing up when your body isn't cooperating anymore. and Mickey kept showing up. I also understood something about the attention around him. New York can make you enormous. And once you're enormous, everybody wants something from you. A story, a quote, an autograph, another home run. Mickey lived with that for years. Was he perfect? No, neither am I. That's probably another reason I never needed Mickey Mantle to be perfect. I just needed to watch him play. And when I did, I understood why an entire generation couldn't take their eyes off him. There have been a lot of great players in this game, but there was only one Mickey Mantle. When you start making a list like this, 5 names don't feel like enough. That's the problem. I could sit here another hour and start naming guys I left out, and somebody would probably get mad because their favorite player isn't on my list. That's baseball. We've been arguing about players for 100 years. We're not going to stop now. But these are the guys that stayed with me. Clemente had that pride. Everything he did on the field looked important to him. Frank Robinson came at you like he had something to prove every night. Willie Mays could do just about anything you could ask a baseball player to do. Hank Aaron made greatness look so normal that sometimes people didn't understand how hard it really was. And Mickey was Mickey. That's enough. The funny thing is, when you're young and playing the game, you don't spend much time thinking about history. At least I didn't. You're trying to get a hit. You're trying to win tonight. You're trying to get through a long road trip and maybe find someplace decent to eat afterward. Then one day you look back and realize you were standing on the same field with some of the greatest players who ever lived. That's pretty special. I was lucky. I saw baseball before everything became instant. We didn't have somebody pulling out a phone every time something happened. A lot of what you saw stayed right there at the ballpark. So you remembered it. I remember the sounds. I remember the dugouts. I remember watching certain guys come to the plate and knowing everybody suddenly cared a little more about the next pitch. Those are the memories I still have. And sure, I remember my own home runs. I remember October. You knew I was going to get that in there somewhere. But when you've been away from the game long enough, you start remembering the other guys too. The ones who made you watch, the ones who made you compete harder, and every once in a while, the ones who made you say to yourself, damn, that guy can play. Those are my 5.